If you are a leader and you micromanage your team, what you're doing is that you're showing them that A, you don't have confidence in yourself, that you can't trust your team enough, that you have to insert yourself. And then the second thing is you're telling your team that you don't trust them. So you're laying the groundwork for somebody who could possibly be doing an excellent job just by micromanaging. Is you're creating this foundation of imposter syndrome for your team.
Welcome to Speaking of Talking. Hi, I'm Jenni Steck, voice and speech coach and total voice nerd, here to explore all the ways our voices shape how we connect, lead, and show up in the world. Each week, we'll chat with inspiring leaders, speakers, and experts from all kinds of industries, people who use their voices to move audiences, rally teams, and make an impact. From polished political speeches to spontaneous sideline interviews, we'll break down what works, what doesn't, and why it matters. At Jenni Steck Voice and Speech, we've spent the last decade coaching Fortune 500 executives, broadcasters from CNN, ESPN, CBS News, ABC News, and even prepping Hall of Fame speeches for the NFL and Major League Baseball. And now, I get to bring those conversations and insights straight to you. So if you love talking about talking, you're in the right place. And be sure to subscribe to Speaking of Talking wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And check the show notes for helpful tips and tools. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get talking. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to. I'm joined by my dear friend, Dana Cobb. She's the founder of the Vokol Group, a Dallas-based PR agency specializing in arts, entertainment, and lifestyle communications. Dana has spent years preparing spokespeople, CEOs, and public figures to show up with clarity and confidence. Whether they're stepping in front of a TV camera, navigating a press crisis, or walking into a high-stakes meeting. In our conversation, we dig into something every communicator wrestles with: imposter syndrome. We talk about what it really is and isn't, how it shows up in the boardroom, on camera, and even within teams when leaders get it wrong. Dana shares her hard-won strategies for media prep, Q&A confidence, crisis communications, and the one rule that matters the most in every situation. Whether you're stepping into a new role, facing a tough interview, or just trying to silence that inner critic before you walk into a room, this conversation will shift how you think about confidence. Let's get talking. My guest today is Dana Cobb of the Vokol Group. She is a PR whiz and is going to talk to us a little bit today about imposter syndrome and managing imposter syndrome. But Dana, first, I'd love to just have you tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So obviously my name is Dana. Last name is Cobb, like the salad. I have a PR agency here in Dallas. It's called the Vokol Group. We focus mostly on arts and entertainment, lifestyle, public relations. So part of what we do is get clients prepared, ready for being on camera or being in front of people, speaking on behalf of their organization or event. So a lot of that is really kind of preparation, talking points, confidence boosting. And one of the things that we oftentimes run into is not just a lack of confidence, but a lot of times between ourselves and our clients, there is a growing sense of unease and imposter syndrome that is both psychological, but then also can impact business and what it is that we're trying to do and communicate.
So are you finding that even people with lots of experience still run into imposter syndrome?
In working, especially in arts and entertainment, we do have a lot of interaction both with big personalities, whether it's from a celebrity who have a tendency to, quite frankly, be the shyest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, really?
So they actually inherently have their own imposter syndrome because who they are and the messages that they're trying to convey are oftentimes totally contrary to what it is that the general public sees. So a lot of times when we're working with, whether it's a celebrity or even the CEO or some implied confidence holding figure, oftentimes it's showing them how to get out of their way, setting a realistic expectation, both interpersonally and professionally, on what people actually can do and what people expect. And I think one of the big things that imposter syndrome, the best way to overcome it is to show other people in your team, people in your audience, that you are just like them and everybody is all in it together. Oftentimes, people who experience imposter syndrome are the only ones, the only woman in the room, the only one who's under 35, the only one of a particular political persuasion. When you are the only, then the tendency to self-doubt or create that imposter syndrome that you put upon yourself is statistically higher because you are already feeling that the odds are against you. So what I found is if it's all for one for all, from leadership down, it actually will inherently help everybody. It's all about getting the confidence and knowing that nobody is perfect.
So that's really interesting. It sounds to me like what you're saying is if you're a leader at a company, you can create a culture that maybe you yourself don't experience the imposter syndrome, but you're also trying to help the rest of your team feel comfortable and confident getting up in front of each other. So part of it is a culture within an organization being supportive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if you think about it this way, micromanagers, if you are a leader and you micromanage your team, what you're doing is that you're showing them that A, you don't have confidence in yourself, that you can't trust your team enough, that you have to insert yourself. And then the second thing is you're telling your team that you don't trust them. So you're laying the groundwork for somebody who could possibly be doing an excellent job just by micromanaging. Is you're creating this foundation of imposter syndrome for your team.
That is so interesting, Dana, because when I think about imposter syndrome, I'm usually thinking about it in terms of the client-facing piece of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go out and do a hit on the evening news, the local news, to talk about our company. That's what I've always thought about it as.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right. Within the company, it's funny to say I hadn't really put those pieces together, but that's exactly what a lot of my clients are struggling with when they come to me. They have to speak internally. A lot of the clients that come to me, I hadn't really put it together that what they're dealing with is imposter syndrome. Let's say they've gotten a promotion and now they're leading a team, or they've really been more of a creative and haven't had to present their ideas before. I guess when I think of imposter syndrome, I'd always really thought of it as, you on the stage presenting some great idea or going on a newscast. But it really is any of those situations where you have that self-doubt, that moment before you go in where you think, they're going to see right through me. I don't deserve to be here.
Exactly. It's not just a feeling of being unqualified. It's a feeling of being undeserved. That's what happens is as an imposter, you think, I guess I don't deserve this promotion, or I don't deserve to be the spokesperson, or I don't deserve to be, getting this award, things along those lines. So you're right. Have it just inherently that confidence in saying, I do deserve this. I am qualified. I do deserve this. It's like the Sunday scaries. I mean, and we've all had them, and sometimes they're the Monday scaries, and everything is driven by the fact that you're nervous about what it is that you are not doing well enough to deserve what you're getting. And that's awful. But it's becoming so much more prevalent, honestly, in the ecosystem that we currently, both professionally and personally, living in now.
I don't know if you agree, but I feel like one of the best things you can do to counter imposter syndrome is practice.
Yes.
And get in a state of mind that is outward focused. So being very clear about what you're trying to achieve in that encounter, or what you're hoping that this group you're talking to are going to take away.
The big thing is that what I think happens is that people rehearse messing up. They don't rehearse doing well. And so what we try and do is that when somebody does start rehearsing and they're like, oh, I messed up, I'm like, okay, let's stop rehearsing messing up. Because if somebody feels that they have done it, then they feel like they belong in that position. And then the imposter syndrome kind of fades away.
So when you say, don't practice messing up, are you teaching them how to keep going? Like, we're all going to flub sometimes. And it doesn't mean you did a bad job.
Exactly.
It just means you have to be okay with the fact that you might fumble. It doesn't mean you're less than. It's how you react in that moment.
Yep.
Right? And if you've practiced recovery and moving forward, then you're more likely to be fine if that happens. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, basically, as long as when you go in and your standpoint is, I'm here to contribute, not to be perfect.
Oh, I like that.
That ease of not being perfect and actually believing it will run miles whenever it comes to your overall outward vibe to audiences.
That's a great point. And it again takes me back to the, what's their mindset going in and helping them switch that self-talk beforehand from something like, I have to be perfect. I can't mess up. I need to prove I deserve to be there. Those are all inward-looking goals. Especially when we're dealing with media training and getting somebody to be ready to get in front of a camera who would otherwise not be. A lot of times they want to memorize so that they don't mess up. And it's like, no, because if you memorize something, you will mess up. And especially if it's live. Other things, though, I will tell you that really, when we're even talking about practicing, so in our job, in our industry, there are certain media opportunities that we actually line up for clients based on just them needing practice. No interview is a throwaway interview, but if it's going to be an interview that would not have the viewership of ABC Nightly News, and we know that we definitely want to get some real-time practice in the real situation, sometimes we'll go ahead and we'll slot some of the practice rounds with other media with kind of smaller outlets. And that also really has a tendency to help, because once somebody gets in front of a camera once, usually they're pretty good about it afterwards once they know. That reminds me of the conversation that I had with Samantha on a different episode where she's talking about practicing her pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And she does a similar thing for as far as when she schedules her pitches. So she'll do the ones that she feels like are the biggest, most exciting opportunities last. So by the time she gets there, she's already practiced her pitch in front of people, decision makers, maybe 5 or 6 times before she gets to that one. So now she's really worked through her shtick, kind of like a comedian, right? Or you can get the smaller clubs before they, record it for their Netflix special.
Absolutely. And the thing is that honestly, it all is a script. I mean, whether it's a pitch or whether it's a promotion or it's all just scripting and confidence. And the one thing that I will say that I have found that it torpedoes people's confidence in you is if you hesitate too much. And so that's another thing that I always kind of look for, is looking for some of those pregnant pauses and saying, okay, well, what are we going to do that because if you have the confidence in what you're actually talking about, then those hesitations can diminish, and leaving less room and basically tightening up your script or, tightening up your act, if you will, leaving less to chance, which then inherently makes you more confident.
I would imagine part of that too, in addition to the pauses, would be the filler words.
Oh my gosh. So when we do media training, we have a media training book. And part of that is even just saying, here are the correct colors to wear, not necessarily that complement your things, but it's also used so you don't want to use big, bright, patterns. But there's also things that you also don't want to do. Words like just, sorry, hopefully, or I think. All of those things just shrink your authority. So instead of saying, I just want to ask a question, say, I have a question. Like there's 2 different things. Like there's, I don't want to, I'm so sorry, but can you answer this for me? Or if you're walking into your room, sorry for the delay, instead of say, thank you for your patience. It's a lot more assertive. Outwardly, the way that you present yourself or the way that you answer some things will reduce that imposter syndrome, because you're inherently putting yourself at a position of strength, not weakness.
I love that. So we're thinking about the language that you're using too. Mm-hmm. We all have that little monitor, that self-monitor going. And whenever I hear myself taking those long pauses or using filler words, it's like I hear it, I can't stop it. It feeds that imposter syndrome. I say that or so, and I'm confirming in real time all the fears that I had going into it.
Yep.
Practice would eliminate a lot of that, right? It's not always going to be a prepared spiel that you're going to go out there with, right? Sometimes you're going on for question and answer and you can't really anticipate. I mean, maybe you're lucky and they send you the questions ahead of time, but how do you prep people to sound confident, feel confident with the Q&A kind of session?
So, for instance, on something like that, it is preparation, and it's really just a matter of going back to when you were in junior high or high school, and they had the how to write an essay part of the class, where you have your introduction paragraph, and then you have what your point is, and then the 3 proof points to back up what your statement is, and then paragraph 2, or is the second proof point, and then the justification for those 3 examples, and all of that. So part of that is also just preparing and creating an outline, so that if a journalist or somebody's asking you a question, and the question is, how is weather going to impact your event? Then before you've gone into that interview, you've already prepared those talking points in advance, and you can kind of choose your own adventure using those, but definitely looking at that essay model of what is it that I'm trying to prove? What is it, the argument I'm trying to make? What are the proof points, and what are the examples that back it up? And that really honestly is pretty relevant for pretty much anything when you're going to be on camera.
So when you work with a client, do you have them think through those potential questions that might come at them? Or are you, as a PR person, also working with them because you've been around the block, you know the types of questions that get asked? You might even know the reporter who's going to be talking to them. Do you supplement what they've come up with, or do you give them homework? How does that?
Yeah, honestly, so it's, do I, as a little column A and a little column B, it just really depends on, sometimes if it's the CEO who has been in that position for a long enough time and really kind of is media savvy and has been through the block, they already kind of know what to do, but it is all a collaboration, because there are also things that some people might not know, that are, trigger words that might be part of one person's vernacular, but in a different environment, it could come across quite differently. And so it's really kind of going through and making sure that part of the prep process is obviously looking at what Q&As or what the statement is, what the position is, what are some landmines to watch out for, and really just kind of doing that prep work in advance. Really in itself will combat imposter syndrome. And I guess that's truly really what more and more we say is like, it's really just kind of practicing and not pretending you have confidence, but actually having confidence in what you're saying. And the other thing is this is something that I, unfortunately, am so guilty of. And I have been making it a point to police myself. You commit to things that maybe are a little off your own scope of work just because you want that person to like you. And ultimately, then you're setting yourself up to fail, which is where imposter syndrome festers, because the reason why you have imposter syndrome in that case is because you are not confident what you're doing. And that's just sabotage. That's self-sabotage. And I think that there's a very distinct line between those two. I have found, as I've gotten older, don't bite off more than you can chew, or at least, and especially if you're going to bite it off, at least make sure that your body can digest it.
Something you said reminded me of a short presentation I did with a group on advocating for yourself. And it became very clear to me that a big part of why this happened to be a group of women, and I would say maybe we're more prone to this, struggled with advocating for themselves, for asking what they wanted, whether it be in terms of moving up, asking for a raise, getting to work on certain projects that they're really interested in and would like to be a part of. A big response that came up over and over of like, what gets in your way? What's the obstacle of you getting what you want? And over, the response was imposter syndrome. I need to get over my issues with feeling like, oh, well, maybe I don't really deserve it. When the proof is that they do. So this imposter syndrome has tentacles that go into not just I'm presenting, talking about my company, or I'm leading a meeting internally. It's even impacting people and their career trajectory. You had mentioned to me, I think last time we met, for those of you who don't know, Dana and I are good friends. We've known each other since college, and we have regular discussions about these kinds of topics. But you mentioned to me something about putting up like a kid with a playpen
Yeah. Yeah. Children thrive on boundaries. And we do too. That was the one thing when our daughter was very small. And now, of course, almost 20, but that was 20 years ago. I always felt it was almost cruel to put her in the playpen. I mean, I know that sounds very dated, but you put a little boundary up, or I was like, that's just so mean. Why would you, like, you're totally restricting. And it's like, no, they need to feel the confidence that they are safe and protected. And it is our job to instill that in them. And part of that is creating those safe and thoughtful boundaries, both physically and mentally, whether it's grounding some kid because they took out the car without asking. Those are the boundaries that will help them thrive, because those are the types of things mistakes that they won't make again, and that will make them fully realized functioning adult humans. Knowing that for kids, and then how that can be applied in life as an adult, is really important, because we still thrive on our own boundaries. And that has to also be kind of coupled with vulnerability, in that nobody's perfect. And if we're talking about people thinking that they're not good enough, seeking some sort of validation. And honestly, where that starts to kind of dovetail into is mentorship, and working with a mentor that can literally look at you and say, I've been there, I've done that, you're not alone, here's how to work through it. Mentorship is probably one of the other most underrated salves for imposter syndrome.
That's such a great suggestion. And as you said, especially for those individuals who are one of a group, so the only woman in the room, the only person of color in the room, finding someone, and maybe you have to look outside your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and that's obviously professional development, looking at books. And, like, there's so many books that I've read as far as go ask the manager, or one of my favorite ones is Indispensable, How to Make Yourself Indispensable to a Company. That's an excellent book. But the thing is that those are also kind of ways that if you're not in the place that you can actively source out a mentor within the organization or within your field at the ready, then go and look at those professional development tools that might help give you the confidence in knowing that somebody else has been there as well.
And you can learn from what they've tried.
Yeah. And I think seeking out mentorship, or seeking out other people, or seeking accountability, talking to you, talking to other people, that is also another way to combat imposter syndrome, just by arming yourself with correct knowledge. And that seeds itself also into going on, if you're the CEO of a company and you have a group of CEOs that you talk to on the regular, well, their nuggets of information will then also feed into, if you're on camera talking about your company and those things, all of the ways to kind of combat or to prepare yourself against your self-instigated imposter syndrome really honestly feeds itself into better business overall, in my opinion.
You brought up something a few minutes ago, managing a crisis in your business. I cannot imagine having to be the face of the company that has messed up in some way. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would really challenge your sense of confidence. Mm-hmm. I mean, the imposter feelings would flare.
Yeah,
I would imagine. What is that crisis management from your perspective as a PR person? How do you help them work through that? What are the mistakes you see when people are going through crisis management? Mm-hmm. What is that?
So with crisis comms, whether it's crisis management or however you want to call it, the biggest thing, don't lie. Do what you say what you do. This will timestamp what we're doing right now. And again, we are not politicizing literally anything. But currently we do a lot of events. We do PR for events in Texas and beyond. And currently there are certain members of the population that don't necessarily feel safe going to special events because they're afraid that they're going to potentially be immigration law enforcement.
Okay.
At a holiday event, or at a pickle party, or at a fan event, or state fair. I mean, people are concerned about that. So part of that is for us to write a playbook, crisis comms playbook, with this one particular situation, what would happen if there were law enforcement at one of these events, and then preparing who would say what. So as the spokesperson, what is the phone number? Who do they call? What are the approved talking points? The thing is that the biggest problem is, again, if somebody were to not tell the truth, because that will always blow up in somebody's face. In that case, it's always better to say, I will get back to you with the correct answer rather than just making it up. So from crisis communications in itself, the person who is the spokesperson has got to have the most confidence ever in what they're saying. And that just comes from preparation. There are other things that social media has really muddied it all up. And now AI, like you kind of don't even know what you believe anymore. So crisis communications is actually, the evolution has taken a pretty strong right turn to try and see like, what's the potential fallout of what you're about to say? And is there a fallout of it in 10 years from now or 15 years from now? Or, even those types of things, looking and, culturally acceptable statements that may have been made 15 years ago are not appropriate now. I mean, there's just, the nuance is very strange. But the most important thing is just don't lie.
You mentioned the events. I hadn't thought about that as being a form of crisis communication and management. That's not anything that the event planners did wrong. It's like an external force that's impacting attendance, impacting maybe even who comes and participates. Like I would imagine a fan event like Comic-Con or something like that. It might impact who comes to be a featured speaker or guest.
Yeah. Topical, like what is the booking of a particular guest going to do? Like booking somebody like Bad Bunny for the Super Bowl. What was the PR fallout from that? But they knew before booking him, they had their talking points. There was a petition to replace Bad Bunny with George Strait. So Americans got themselves together and signed a change.org petition. And you're like, the organizers wouldn't have I know that they knew that there would be some sort of a fallout, but to the point where there's petitions and then saying, how are you going to combat that within the media? And the Super Bowl comms team, like, okay, well, that is definitely a fly in the ointment. How are we going to deal with it? When crisis comes for every event, the longer that we work with somebody, that also, I'm sorry, it also has everything to do with population. So using the example as the law enforcement, if I was working on an event that was in San Antonio, there would be a different way that I would approach the language talking about that particular thing in San Antonio. Not even just like the actual language, whether it's Spanish or English, but truly the delicacy into which the messaging is told versus, a San Francisco or versus a Des Moines, Iowa. I mean, there's just nuances that just have to be minded.
That reminds me of this strategy that I use that I've talked to you about before. Going back to intention, a big piece of setting up what your goal is for that interaction, for that event, whatever it happens to be, is to really understand who the audience is.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to approach things very differently if I'm in San Antonio versus Topeka or wherever. But it reminds me, I recently gave a presentation in Austin to a group that's kind of a tech group. And I really did not understand what their business was. And so I was feeling kind of anxious about the presentation and feeling some of that imposter syndrome because I was like, I don't understand their world. I don't know what kinds of things they work on. And to combat that, I had them share videos with me of their participants, like on calls with clients, so I could understand the vocabulary that they use, understand their world a little bit better. So all that you have been talking about in terms of crisis management or the imposter syndrome itself is thinking about preparation, anticipation, being as knowledgeable as you can be about the group that you're talking to. For me, was really, really helpful, getting to watch their videos. And so then actually when I was presenting, I saw some of the people in the audience that I had reviewed on their on video. It was incredibly helpful. And I felt like I could speak to them. Even though I hadn't met them, it felt like I knew them already because I'd watched their work. The most important thing for me was to understand the lingo and understanding this product that they were trying to sell to people, because it's so outside of my world that it was very easy for me to fall into imposter syndrome. But educating myself for me was like the best way. And then tweaking my message to best suit what their day-to-day is like.
Well, and I think that's a perfect example. I'm sorry to stump on you, but that's a perfect example of giving yourself the grace to say, I'm here to contribute, not to be perfect.
Yes.
Because when you're coming to that and you're saying, okay, I'm here to contribute. Here's how I can better contribute is by gaining enough knowledge to where I can contribute with some sort of working knowledge. But I sure as heck am not going to be perfect. Like, I'm not going to learn everything overnight about this business that somebody clearly has devoted their lives to. Like, and that's, I guess, part of that is balancing yourself with grace. There's a shack that we used to drive by on the way down to the lake house, and it's just this little hut, and it has a sign on it that says "slack cut here." And it's like, I feel like, you know what? Sometimes you just got to give yourself some slack. Cut yourself some slack. And that really is just a reminder, like, slack cut here. Cut yourself some slack. And I think that is also a way to combat imposter syndrome, is just by giving yourself a little grace.
Well, you're right. If I had gone in there thinking, oh, I totally understand their world, I am an imposter. Because I don't. There's no way I could know it as deeply as they do. I know my work, and I know how I can help them communicate better, but I can't pretend that I understand their technology and even all of the services that they offer. I mean, like you said, it's okay to say, that's not why they have me there. They don't have me there to be the expert on technology. I'm there to help them communicate better.
Right. And the other thing is that if you were to position yourself to them that you are the expert, well, then you're lying.
That's right. I am the imposter.
You are. So just like, and that's really it. First rule, just don't lie.
There you go. Yeah.
There are so many different examples of how people have taken one route communication-wise, whether it was with a crisis or not, just general communication, and just blows back up in your face, or was a happy accident. I mean, there's so many of those different examples, but I think ultimately at the end of it, when you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, great, this is how I'm going to operate. And part of it is contribution, not perfection.
So we haven't shared everything, all the types of industries that you've worked with. You have worked with some pretty exciting and interesting entertainment groups, and I guess I would say like public figures. Are you surprised? Has anyone surprised you by seeming nervous or really needing to lean on you because they are just so afraid?
I'm trying to think of some examples without outing somebody. I mean, this is an example, and I used this on more recently just because it was more recent. I was mistaken for a journalist, for a TV reporter at the beginning of the summer when I was actually setting up an interview with Mr. T. But I wasn't the person interviewing him, but he thought I was. So he talked to me like a reporter, which is great, but he spoke for almost an hour. And I would say that was one of those cases that was such a happy situation because the exact opposite side of the coin of imposter syndrome. Because I mean, if you're Mr. T, you're not really worried about what people, it's Mr. T, you're Mr. T. But his historic information, telling anecdotes about when Nancy Reagan called him during the war on drugs from the White House, and he answered a phone, and he's like, the White House, and telling all these stories about working with her, working on the aid team. More importantly, all of his life and his generosity. Mr. T doesn't wear gold chains anymore. And I asked him, because that's what he's known for. And he said that after Hurricane Katrina, he didn't feel right wearing all that gold when he really felt like the gold is in his heart, and he doesn't need to kind of outwardly show when there are other people that just aren't, that it's not representative of who he really is. So there are things like that you say, oh my gosh, like this guy is fascinating and has tales for days, but he was also sweet and soft and not at all what you'd expect, I pity the fool to be like. So yeah, there are more examples of confidence in the industry. And what we're talking about in particular in my job is that I do a lot of work with fan conventions. And inherently, there's going to be celebrity and voiceover actors and things like that. So I do have a lot more of that interaction face-to-face with celebrities in a very specific celebrity-focused environment versus, going down to McAllister's Deli and running into Tom Cruise and pretending that he's supposed to be ready for TV there. I mean, the good thing is that my job in that respect is I'm pretty much teed up And so are they. So I don't have to do as much work on that. That's an interesting part of that because it's the folks that are less well-known that probably have a little bit more of a challenge. And a lot of that is instilling confidence in them so that they can exude that and not have the hesitation in interviews and them saying, I'm contributing, I'm not perfect, but still coming across as a leader. The everyday man is probably a little bit more of an interesting subject when it comes to what we do.
So are you on site with them? Are you hyping them up if it's your client?
Mm-hmm.
What is your relationship like with them from start to event?
So typically from what I do, specifically with events, is we do have spokespeople for events. I'm going to use Fan Expo as an example. Fan Expo is based out of Toronto. The vice president lives and breathes Toronto. If I have an advance interview and he can't make it, then we will step in and perform the duties of a spokesperson. A lot of times it is partial to both of them. But then on site, and that honestly is a nuance of my job, is as a spokesperson, contrary to literally everything I've just said, I am supposed to look like I know everything about exactly what I'm talking about. And so that is the preparation and that is the confidence building. And it is knowing when to say, I don't know the answer to that. But when it comes to an event, events primarily, the main goal of anything is to just sell tickets. So whether it's advertising, marketing, PR, social media, blogging, whatever, if it's promoting an event, ultimately it's to get the door to swing open. And in the restaurant industry, it's called door swings. So it's every time the door swings, you can get more. And that's really how it is with events. When it comes to other more leadership or, one of the clients is, we talked about Soul Man's Barbecue, and Soul Man's CEO has been there. I've been working with him for almost 13 years. And he's made his way through being, a greener version of himself in that he was younger, less experienced, not necessarily as a CEO, but on camera and things like that. And over the past 13 years, he's just evolved into a media darling. And I don't ever have to worry about him going onto a radio show. He knows or a TV, without me having to necessarily coach him. So there are different degrees of coaching for me. Yes, for sure.
It's interesting to say, I don't have to worry about him. It's almost like you're a handler.
Absolutely.
And they trust you to do that, to shepherd them through the process because it's new to them. They already have that imposter syndrome. They don't know what to do.
And talk about making a situation even more high stress is if you put that person on TV and then they're telling all of their family and friends to tune in. And everybody's so excited because so-and-so is going to be famous for a minute. And so you're not just representing the brand and yourself, but you also you have your family that's tuning in, and it's also going to be amplified on social media, and it's going to live in perpetuity on some social media. So there's a lot more gravitas to some of those types of situations. So yes, thinking about when I say I don't have to worry about him and being a handler, it's because I don't with him, but if there was something that went wrong, it could last for a really long time.
You bring up an interesting point talking about the tools that we have, all of these AI support systems, I guess I would say, search engines and all of that. I don't know if you feel this way, but I do sometimes worry about being replaced by AI. I mean, there's some incredible software out there right now that will coach you, give you feedback on your presentation. You talk to it just like you're talking to a person and it'll give you feedback. But, and this came up in my conversation with Barry about news media, what is it about a human that AI can't replicate? And I'm thinking about your world, all of these tools, these search engines and things, but it can't decide what to do with that. Understanding why that matters, why it could have a negative impact, and making decisions about how to counteract that. It's really you have to have someone who has experience and understanding of human nature that I don't think AI is going to be able to do.
Hopefully.
Right? Fingers crossed.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
You and I are of a generation that I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 19.
I think I was 21.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't use the internet. I think we used it maybe a little bit in college, but we didn't email our assignments. Like you printed them up on your dot matrix printer and brought it to school. And like, this is in college. Like we're not even talking about like junior high. So I think we as a generation, Gen X, is unbelievably prepared for this advent of AI, and that we are uniquely prepared to overcome the objections or the scary factor of computers taking over the world, because we've already seen it come and our lives adjust. And I think it's dangerous as far as AI, but I don't think that our generation is prepared for whatever comes our well, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But I'm really more worried about manipulation of fake media than I am about some computer taking over my job.
Gosh, that's a whole new can of worms for you to manage.
Yep.
Talk about crisis management.
Exactly. Again, if a spokesperson, if they're taken out of context and actually like in an AI standpoint, like a deep fake type thing, that is scary to me. And hopefully it'll be regulated and my concerns will be unfounded. Let's just go with that.
I hope you're right, because I will be the biggest sucker. I cannot tell them apart. My daughter will come up to me and say, okay, Mom, here's a quiz. Can you tell which one is AI? And I'm right maybe 70% of the time. There's a lot in that 30% that could be really bad. But as you said, I mean, this is a great example of you, and your role is having to be so forward thinking and anticipating problems that could be coming up that aren't real yet, but you can see where it's headed.
Yeah. And that is an example, truly, even in saying forecasting of potential snafus and preparing for it, whether it's law enforcement at the state fair and having a prepared statement, or somebody, being misrepresented on the internet and that diminishing a brand because not by their own fault, but somebody came out. We have to be very careful when we have influencers that come to certain events, because they obviously speak on their own behalf. And some influencers have a particular leaning that may not necessarily jive with the brand philosophy of who it is that they're at. And how do we control that? I mean, it is an interesting world, but I think common sense is what's truly trying to prevail. And AI doesn't have that. So I think I'm going to be okay.
One last question for you.
For sure.
It's still kind of on topic, but whenever I have a conversation with you about business or thinking about impact, negative or positive on a reputation, I'm always struck by how deeply you think about these things, how quick your mind is. And it makes me wonder, in your opinion, what makes a good PR person?
Well, it's funny because it's changed so much. So speaking personally, so when I went to college, I went to SMU. I wanted to be a theater major, but I didn't get into the theater school because I cannot act my way out of a bag, which is a hard truth. So I still went to SMU anyway, even though I didn't get into theater school, thank God. And back then you didn't have to declare a major. So I eventually found PR, and the program is Public Affairs and Corporate Communication. And what was really interesting to me is I started in 94. In 1995, they had a graduate level class. It was the first time that they ever offered this graduate level class, and it was limited to only 10 students. And they didn't have that much interest in it. So they opened it up to a couple of undergrads. And so I signed up for it. And it was SMU's first ever crisis communications class.
Oh, wow.
Talk about full circle. It was the first case study that we studied was the Tylenol crisis of the 80s and the package tampering. And using those case studies and then going all the way through and figuring all of those out. And doing that. And Rita Kirk was the professor. She's still there. She still had a CCP, I think. And it was such a fascinating class that I ended up then becoming a PR major. Cut to, I didn't do PR at all. I did, it was part of my job when I moved to New York and did marketing for Broadway shows, but we had a PR agency. And so it was working with the agency and learning from them in real life and going to the interviews or going to Good Morning America with Vanessa Williams because she was in Into the Woods. Like I would talk about being a handler. That's all I did was handle, but I didn't necessarily know the application of PR. Moved down here, worked at the AT&T Performing Arts Center, same thing. But the PR was always driving ticket sales. PR was always about like getting butts and seats, getting these types of things. Then when I started going into more application of public relations as it pertains to events, but then also personalities and also like trying to move the needle in certain different ways, I think that is probably where the quickness, ironically, as I pause, where just the ability to kind of turn on a heel and evaluate in real time and come up with hopefully the correct answer, that comes with a maturity that I never, ever would have been able to swing when I first started back after Rita Kirk's crisis comms class in 1996. And so I think that's probably part of, when you're saying, how is it like, how does the application, it's life, it's the school of hard knocks. And it's also that the predictability, the greatest predictor of the future is the past. And if that's the case, then I have to lean in on that knowledge in order to best counsel clients. And that's really it has to be intact or I'll make a mistake. And now I'm just used to it.
Ho hum. Bring it on. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Now I'm just hanging out with the Mr. T.
That's so amazing.
Oh, I have the whole interview. I'll send you a link.
Oh my God. Can I put it in the show notes?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I will send it to you. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Any parting thoughts on imposter syndrome?
It's so funny. As I've noticed that people are talking about it.
It's coming up a lot right now.
It's mainstream. It is everywhere. And I think there's, a lot of uncertainty in the world that makes people doubt their own convictions. And so when it comes from the top and it kind of rolls downhill, there's a certain approach to life and information that is getting a little muddied. So I think that might have why people are just kind of like a little shaken. But the most important thing is, like I said, cut yourself some slack and
don't lie.
And don't lie.
Dana, thank you so much for this conversation.
No problem, Jenni. Thank you.
I love to talk to you anytime.
Awesome. All right, my dear.
Thanks so much for joining me on Speaking of Talking. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review, share it with a friend, or send it to someone who geeks out on voice just as much as we do. For more tips, tools, and behind-the-scenes goodies, head to the show notes or visit us at jennisteck.com. I'm Jenni Steck. And remember, your voice isn't just how you sound, it's how you show up. Own it, trust it. And let's keep talking, because we've got a lot to say.